Hello, hello, hello. This is Adrienne Berg, and this is The Ageless Traveler. And this is the kind of show you really love. This is the show where we highlight somebody who is a real veteran traveler, over 105 countries, still counting, written two fabulous books about her experiences, really inspires us to travel no matter what. And you'll see what I mean by that in just a moment. Her name is Karen Gershowitz. Now, she's a travel writer. She's a photographer. She's, of course, an author of two wonderful books, but also she's a storyteller. And we're going to hear some wonderful stories from Karen today. So thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm delighted to be with you. I always love talking about travel. So any opportunity.
Fantastic. Well, this is a good opportunity because you have some extraordinary books out. In fact, one of them is called Wanderlust, Extraordinary People, Quirky Places, and Curious Cuisine. And I'm going to dive right into one of the stories that I was most curious about. Your bad meal. You say the worst meal in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Tanzania. Yes, in Tanzania. Now, we never say bad things about places. If there's something bad, I just don't talk about it. But you're not that kind of girl. So tell me about this meal in Tanzania.
Yeah, I usually write about the good stuff, but this was an epically bad meal. And what made it epic is that this was on a Cheap Charlie tour. It's the only way to describe it. Even had to bring food. You know, a week before they said, oh, would you bring sardines and would you bring this and that? And so we were schlepping all this stuff to Tanzania. And now we are out in the middle of, I think we were in the Ngorongoro crater. There is no other place for food. And we come back from a game drive after sunset and they ring a bell, dinner is ready. And the cooks are used to Tanzanian food, not Western food. So they really don't understand it. There's no other way to describe it. It's not something that they eat. Anyhow, they were told to make a salad, a main course, and a dessert.
Sounds fair.
They did, which they did, all in a single bowl.
Oh.
Yeah. So we got, I think it was canned vegetables, which were the salad with salad dressing on it, followed by noodles and sardines. And the top was tinned fruit with tinned condensed milk on it, covered with the oil from the sardine can. Yeah.
Well, I have to say something on their behalf. I only have supervised visitation with my stove. I really don't. I'm not kidding. I don't know how to cook, and I have made things not quite as bad as that. That is the worst meal in the world. But I did once make for my husband to court him before we married what I called summer soup. But it was lettuce in a blender with my spicing. And that was the smartest thing I ever did in my life. And I'll tell you why, Karen. I married 55 years and I've never, ever since had to make a meal. So I could tell you, this is true. But this is the wonderful stuff that you remember. Now, that's really what Wanderlust, your book, is.
It was literally unforgettable because it was
unforgettable. So did anybody eat it? No. Nobody.
Well, we took out various pieces of it. Well, there was no other food. I mean, if you didn't eat that,
you had nothing.
Nothing. I mean, we had bought some protein bars and stuff, but there really wasn't anything else. So we were taking things out and cleaning them off. And.
So let's go from the ridiculous to the sublime. And that is another story in your book about making noodles in China. Now, that honestly sounds good. So let's hear about that.
Well, again, in this case, I was on a tour and we were going to some fairly remote places. And in this case, we were going to a farmer's village that was quite far outside of Beijing. And we stayed overnight and it was a home visit. And there were 4 people who stayed with this one particular family. And she asked us if we all liked to cook. Mind you, she was asking us in Chinese. And of course, we didn't understand, but we had a little cheat sheet that had Chinese and English next to it. So she would point to a number and we'd look at it and go, okay, 43. Do you like to cook? Yes. Okay. And we got a lesson in making homemade noodles as well as preparing the rest of the meal. And Grandma loved me. She became my best friend.
Yes.
So she's helping me rolling out the noodles. Yeah, good job, And then we take them out, we throw them in the water, we pull them out. And it was some of the best noodles I've ever had because literally we made them, we ate them. And we made the rest of the meal as well. But the noodles were really incredible. And I've made them since because she made it really easy. This was not a complicated process, but it was made with such love, and they were so charming that, it was, when they say a meal was made with love, this one was made with love, and it was delicious.
Well, I'm going to actually make a little bit of a pitch. You will see if you are a member of our Travel Tuesday subscriber list, and it's free. This is all free. You have food in 1 week. And there I list about 4 or 5 different culinary immersion experiences. So I did learn to cook. I never cooked, honestly. That was the truth, what I just said. But I did it in cooking classes. I learned to make jambalaya in New Orleans. I learned to make a Vietnamese food in Hoi An, wonderful Argentinian food.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm a pescatarian, so it's fish, not the steak, in the Argentine experience near Iguazu Falls. And I explain it all. So I just want you to be members of our Travel Tuesday newsletter, because you hear somebody wonderful like Karen Gershowitz on the show, but then this helps you take home the information. So you mentioned twice, Karen, that both of those tours that you talked about were tours.
Yes.
What advice would you give somebody in selecting a tour?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure.
How do you select?
First thing is, I like small groups personally, because I think that if you're in a large group, you get lost and it becomes a homogenous experience. You're getting this thing that they've done a million times, and it is in no way tailored to the people who are in the group. Second thing is, I look for, does it go off the beaten path? I don't need someone to show me the Eiffel Tower. Yes. I don't need someone to show me Beijing. I can do that on my own. I want you to take me places that I can't get to on my own, or that either I won't have access to, or are simply remote and difficult to get to. So that's my second criteria. The third criteria, and we talked about this briefly, is I have mobility issues, some serious mobility.
Yes.
I need to make sure that what they're doing, I can do, or at least can modify in some way, so that I can keep up with the group and I don't hold them back. And I'm very aware of that. And I'm careful about not going on things that really are going to be impossible for me to do. And I think a lot of people think, oh, well, I'll manage. The truth is, sometimes you just can't.
Yes.
And so that becomes the criteria. And most of all, I don't much care where I stay, but I'm not looking to stay in 5-star hotels. In fact, I really prefer to stay in really nice local hotels. So where they put you up is another consideration.
So that's really wonderful. That is pretty much my criteria too. Sometimes I'll go on a press trip, but if I'm paying, I'm not a big spender. A friend of mine said, you must have been first class. I have never been on a plane first class. The only time was they bumped me up. Right. And boy, did I get a bump up. It was, I have to give a shout out. It was Virgin, and Branson was on the plane.
Whoa.
Yes, and they put my husband and I next to him. I was a bump up, but otherwise, no, because the more money you can save in the world is by going economy.
It's not just that you're saving money. It's that you're getting a more authentic experience.
Yes, it's a better experience for me, because that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to leave my environment, not reproduce my environment.
Correct.
But everybody is different. Everybody wants different.
For sure.
Now, you call yourself a travel addict. I know what that means, because I am. So this is what I want to ask you. I got a question. We have something called fan lists. People can ask me a question.
Right.
This was an interesting question because it was about me. Usually it isn't. Question was, don't you ever get tired of traveling? And I wrote back saying, no, I never do. I could still get a thrill, a high, endorphins in an airport, looking at we're departing for Dubai or whatever. I go, no, it's like the happiest minutes, like my Disneyland. But you are just as bad.
Oh, yeah.
You're just as bad. So
absolutely.
What do you think drives you to travel?
Well, I'm going to go back to my grandmother, who was an immigrant from Russia. And when she was in her 60s, and this was in the 1950s, decided that she had to take a tour of the United States. She had never really seen her adopted country. Got on a Greyhound bus and traveled all around the U.S. by herself. Had a fabulous time. Did it the second year. The third year, she decided she wanted to go to Russia and go visit her relatives. I was going, how are you going to find them? Well, people in Russia don't move if you're from a small shtetl.
Right.
They stay there. Anyhow, she went back, had a fabulous time, and came back with all of these stories. And I thought, God, I want to do that. That just sounds wonderful. And my mother, she took me to every cultural institution. And if a dance company came in from Mexico or from Brazil or wherever, we were going to see it. And she took me to the Museum of Natural History, and she would ask me questions about things like, gee, these are wonderful masks. Why do you think they have them? I started getting fascinated by other cultures. So the combination of my grandmother showing me that you could actually do it, and my mother illustrating all of these diverse cultures. And we went to, at that time, I was probably the only kid in New York City who loved sushi and could eat with chopsticks. Now, in the 50s, that was not something for sure. My mother was like, yeah, we're going to try everything.
It's so nostalgic for me. I'm from Brooklyn, and in the 50s, all right, we had to make igloos. We had to make a book about the Pueblo Indians. I mean, we're talking about a tiny little lower middle class school in Brooklyn. But you had to know what was going on in China. And we were people of the world. And because it was New York, you could take a train and go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, to Lincoln Center, the Brooklyn Museum. I will show in my Travel Tuesday newsletter a picture of a souvenir, and it's a Native American. And I bought it there in, 1955, and I still have it. There was this idea that we would be going to become cultured. And we used to hear that word cultured. It was a mantra. And I think that was a moment in time. Do you feel the same way?
I do. But I also think that it was very much a personal thing. I can remember having Cuban American food, or, just all of these, cuisines. We tried everything. And, once you try it, you go, ooh, isn't that wonderful? I want to have it where they actually make this food, not, is this the way it really tastes, or is it a replica?
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that it's true of my mom too, and my father when he was around. We went everywhere. So this is a lesson to all the grandparents out there and to all the parents out there. If you do want to develop the love of travel for your child, it's very easy to do. You could do it in your own backyard, in your own museum, in your own cultural center, wherever you are, anywhere in the world. So don't you go anywhere, because when we come back, we're going to climb at Kilimanjaro. Yes, we are. Don't you guys go anywhere. We'll be right back. If you've been thinking about a cruise, I've definitely got you covered with Cruises It. Now, we have just become affiliated with them. And who are they? Well, Cruises It is the top agency for all the main cruise lines and some of the less known cruise lines as well. Cruises It has access to booking space that's been open years in advance, so you can get the best cabins, and that's just number one. But they also make the prices lower. The cruise lines give Cruises It their own exclusive agency discounts. And if you're not from the cruise line, they have their own agency discounts that would apply as well. So you get both any discounts you would normally get on the cruise line, plus additional discounts that are given exclusively to Cruises It because they bring in so much business. On top of all those discount perks, when you book with them, you get the best rate guaranteed. And this is because Cruise Fair Watch system takes place. Now, what Cruises It does is it tracks the pricing until the final payment date. So you keep in mind that to get the best rate guaranteed, you have to use my site. We have affiliated with them specifically. I sat down, I met with them in Tucson, Arizona. I met with Marianne Weather. We've now become good friends. She gave me a direct line. Not only a link, which you can certainly use right away, but if you have questions, even a specific phone number. Cruises It offers this not just to anyone that is one of our followers, but if you have friends and family, you can bring them in too. So just take a look at the show notes, and you will see our dedicated phone line and our dedicated link. Happy sailing! And now we're back with Karen Gershowitz. She is a travel addict. She is a travel writer. She's the author of Wanderlust, Extraordinary People, Quirky Places, Curious Cuisine, and Travel Mania, Stories Wanderlust. But one of the things she did that I've never done is climb Kilimanjaro. So tell us that story.
That was, without question, one of the most extraordinary experiences I've had. And prior to going, I was in training for this. Well, I actually knew several people who climbed it. And they said, you need to be in great physical shape. So I was swimming a mile 3 or 4 times a week. I was running, I was hiking. But I was really getting ready for this because one person said to me, well, if you get to the top and you can't make it, the Sherpas will push you. And I thought, no, that's not going to happen. So we set out, and it is a friend of mine and myself and 4 Italian doctors, 3 men and a woman. They spoke no English. We spoke no Italian. We got along famously. And we started out at the bottom, and one of the doctors took our pulse and made sound effects to go with. We go up. The first day, you're walking through what appears to be a rainforest. But when you get to the end of it, you realize that what you've actually done is just walk through the clouds. At sunset, you are looking down and watching the sunset on the clouds. It's extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary. I've seen it from a plane, but this was a whole different experience. The next day, you hike, and it's getting harder and harder. And before the hike, they give you an introductory session. And one of the things that they say is you will hear from your guide and Sherpas constantly, poli, 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 which means slowly, slowly, slowly. Because as you go further and you're going up ultimately to 18,500 feet, the air is getting thinner and thinner. And my friend and I joke because we were constantly having lifesaver breaks. And it was the first time I thought of lifesavers as actual lifesavers. You walk through and it's getting progressively less vegetation, more rocks. And eventually you're getting now to an area where it's mostly very low scrub and rocks. And now the doctors were coming and taking our pulses and going,
yeah, right.
Something like a train. The sound effects were at that point not so appreciated. The next day, you're going up and there is no vegetation at all. And you can see where we're hiking to is a hut. And it doesn't look that far. It took us hours and hours and hours. Partially because the distances you can't tell. There's no way because there's nothing to compare it to. There's nothing in the landscape except this thing way in the distance. You hike and hike and hike, and eventually you get there. And they say, go to sleep now, and it's about 4 p.m. We'll wake you before we go. We're going to go at midnight. And I lay down with something in my backpack, I guess, underneath my head. And I could have sworn that instead of my head being above my feet were above my head. I was totally disoriented. But I managed to sleep. They wake us up, I don't know, 11:30 maybe, and give us a final meal before we go. And it is gruel. It's like eating wallpaper paste. And the Italians have great sense of humor, and they're going, Mama's pasta vazul, pasta primavera, and they're going on and on as we're eating this stuff going, oh my God, this is atrocious. They give us headlamps and off we go. And now it starts getting very steep. And it's scree, which is just basically rock surface, and it's very crumbly. So you walk up 3 steps and you slide down 1. And they had told us that the minute you start to get sick, if you start to throw up, you have to go back. People have died up there. And first, one of the guys got sick. They sent him back. Then another guy got sick. They sent him back. Then I got sick. It was 500 feet from the top. Would not let me go further. I was upset. On the other hand, I understood what the risks were. So I went back. The next guy was also sent back. And the 2 remaining women made it to the top. They were up there for sunrise, stayed there for 15 minutes, and then came back. They let them rest for a while, and then we went back down. The whole thing is 5 days. It's 3.5 days up, 1.5 days back. When we got to the bottom, I was very philosophical about it because the experience was so extraordinary that I honestly didn't care that I hadn't made it to the top. It was just an amazing experience in terms of what you can do, the whole visual splendor of it, because it was gorgeous. And the uniqueness, truly, truly extraordinary experiences. And it was interesting because I had a cousin go up 2 years ago at age 73,
Yes.
and she actually made it to the top.
Yes,
And
I had a friend who went up at age 7, and she did make it to the top. And she was surprised by the Sherpa, who took a banner out of his pocket and held it up, and it said, "Mama made it."
it's funny that you should say that, because they were calling my cousin, "It's okay, Mama. You can do it, Mama."
Yeah, yeah. And so for me, that ship may have sailed at age 78, but I am a hiker, I am a walker, so it's still in my mind, but I'm planning Fuji, which is much easier. I mean,
And
yeah,
it is much easier.
yeah, it is much easier. So those are the kinds of things the stories that I love to hear. And I always feel that something like what Karen Gershowitz is telling us here on The Ageless Traveler is a bonus, something where it's a step by step so that those of you who have this in mind can really know what it's like. Because usually you'll hear something about climbing Kilimanjaro from somebody who did it to the top, is maybe a biohacker, maybe a guy, right? Maybe 35 or 36 years old doing it for the beginning of his midlife crisis, and
Right.
he gets up there. But for us ageless travelers, this is a fabulous bonus from Karen Gershowitz, who is the author of Wanderlust, Extraordinary People, Quirky Places, Curious Cuisine. Now, before we take another break, I do want to go back to a couple of more issues about you. You are very inspirational because you do have issues and you continue to travel with those issues. So just share with us a little bit about it and how you get around in spite of it.
Well, I started having back issues about 20 years ago. And then about 8 years ago, I started to have surgeries on my back. I had had 4 of them. I now have knee issues and I'm about to have both knees replaced. So clearly I have mobility issues and I have had them for a long time. I refuse to stay home. I will never stay home. That's just the bottom line here. It's too much in my DNA to travel. But I learned a long time ago to take help when it's offered. You don't have to do everything. So the first thing I learned, and it happened despite my resisting it, was I take wheelchairs through airports. Why am I using my energy through an airport? It's pointless. And they're happy to do it. I take a wheelchair. The second thing is make it a point to take rest stops. I love sitting in a cafe and people watching. I don't have to go everywhere. I don't have to do everything. And to me, sitting in a park, sitting in a cafe, just being in the environment and getting into conversations with people. I've had some of the most extraordinary conversations with people just sitting in a cafe. I've also learned that if you go for a meal, and again, if you're traveling alone, and most people don't know this, but if you go on to Open Table and some of the other Yelp, you can put in restaurants that have shared tables.
Yes.
And if you do that, you go to those places, you know that people are willing to talk, because if they weren't, they wouldn't be at a shared table.
Brilliant idea.
Yep. And get into conversations with people. It's wonderful. The other thing is I always bring a book with me with a large title in English, and we'll sit reading it. I often go to university campuses and we'll just sit reading a book. And let me tell you, that brings throngs of people over who want to practice English with a native English speaker.
Interesting.
Get into fabulous conversations with people. And to me, that's as much travel as going to see the next monument or museum. In fact, in some ways, it's more.
We have a lot in common. I just wrote about solo travel, and because we have 2 things on Instagram. One is called Not Date Night, where I go by myself specifically, and I take a book. And I did say, I always take a book, but I take a book for a different reason. I take a book so that nobody bothers me. If I'm going to a place that I don't want to be bothered at and not look like somebody who's sitting at a bar waiting for somebody to pick me up. So that's very interesting. And you do it the other way around. But it's different when you're sitting at a bar, when you're sitting in a campus.
Absolutely.
And the second thing we have on Instagram, somebody said to me recently, "So you travel with your husband, but we never see him in the pictures." And I said, "I'll tell you why. He's sitting on a bench someplace." And we started something on Instagram called Sitting with Stuart, because this is a guy who sat on the bench in front of the Taj Mahal. He sat on the bench in front of the Louvre. He sits on the bench everywhere. And he has the best time observing the world.
Yeah.
And I'm always running around like a cockroach, as my mother used to say.
Yeah,
And saying everything and not remembering a thing. But it's a style.
I am always looking, what can I tell a story about?
Yeah.
And invariably, I will find something and I'm taking notes. And it's very interesting because when you're writing somewhere, that also attracts attention, which always surprises me, but it does. And so it's a different way of thinking about it. I was traveling by myself in Zurich and I sat down in a cafe and a woman comes and says, "Do you mind? Can I sit at the table with you?" Sure. We start talking, spoke perfect English. And she started to tell me about the fact that in Switzerland, they were just beginning to get rights to voting. It was 1972, maybe. I was like, what? You can't vote? No, women in Switzerland can't vote. And it was one of the more fascinating conversations. How do you feel about that? Are you fighting for it? It became, we got so engaged. Other people were coming and sitting with us and joining the conversation because it was a very political time in Switzerland. And if you don't think that that was one of the more remarkable conversations I've had, it was extraordinary.
We just wrote in our newsletter about a book, which is by a professor who deals with joy and happiness and kindness. His book is about talking to strangers. The entire book is proof, scientific proof, medical proof, that you are more joyful, more curious, and more healthy if you do talk to strangers. And here we have Karen Gershowitz telling this story as a storyteller that really shows us what can happen. So for those of you who feel that you're alone or you're traveling alone and it's going to be alone, think again. You might meet more people, have more conversations than you would if you went with one companion. Now, don't you guys go anywhere. We'll be right back, and we're going to tell you about our Facebook salon, so you do have companions. We'll be right back. Don't you guys go anywhere. Many of you belong to Facebook groups, I know that. But do you belong to a Facebook salon? Well, we have one. It's called the Ageless Traveler Facebook Salon, and you can simply go to agelesstraveler.com. You'll see right on the very home page where you can click and join our salon free of charge, or you can go to the show notes right here and click and join our salon free of charge. We have about 400 people in it now with no advertising whatsoever, because these are people who want to meet each other so they can travel and never stop traveling. Companionship is sometimes a problem for the ageless traveler. Burnout is sometimes a problem, or just a little bit of know-how makes such a difference in your trip, and we can share with each other if you join the salon. And when you do that, I ask you a couple of questions. What's important to you? Why are you joining it? And I tell you some of the things we do for you. And I also ask you for your email address. What do I need that for? Well, I put you immediately on our Travel Tuesday newsletter list. And that's what gets you all of the discounts, all the information, all the little nitty-gritty details for great travel in your box every single Tuesday. So go to our salon, join, and be part of our family. And now we're back, and we're going to talk about strudel. I know. But yes, we are going to talk about strudel because that's the kind of a hairpin Karen Gershowitz is. She tells stories about her now over 105 trips. Who knows where the next one is? We'll discuss that in a minute. But her books you can find right on our show notes: Wanderlust, Extraordinary People, Quirky Places, Curious Cuisine, Travel Mania, another one of her books, Stories of Wanderlust. Okay, Vienna, to me, if I'm going to eat a piece of cake, it's going to be Sachertorte in Vienna. It is not going to be strudel, but in your case, it's strudel. So tell us about the strudel.
The grandmother who I mentioned before, who inspired me to travel, was also possibly the worst cook on the planet. She made cookies that if you didn't eat them within 3 minutes of them coming out of the oven, you could break a tooth. And her idea of strudel was making dough that was 1/4 of an inch thick, that was filled with apricot jam or strawberry jam, and then rolled, put in the oven, and baked until it was hard as a rock, and all of the jam had oozed out and burned.
I've seen those.
This was strudel. Well, I get to Vienna, and I see this gorgeous pastisserie, Cafe Mozart, still there because I came back.
Cafe Mozart is definitely there. And now it's a chain. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this was the original.
Original.
Yep. Go in and I'm looking at this gorgeous display case of every kind of possible pastry you could want, and they're all beautiful. So I don't know what to get. And the waiter, what do you suggest? Oh, you must have our strudel. We're famous for it. And I'm thinking, strudel?
I'm out of here.
I'm out of here. I don't want strudel. He said, no. You really have to have strudel. So he brings me a piece of strudel. And I was like, really? That's strudel? It was revelatory is the only way I can describe it. It's like, oh my God, I should have known because I knew what her cookies were like. And I knew what everything else she baked was like. Why did I think that was actually strudel? It was amazing. It was fabulous. And it was like, look at that. A total change of my perspective.
Everybody's looking for the culinary experience that's extraordinary. But I have actually found that if you go into a place, first go to what they're famous for. So,
Absolutely.
and in Vienna, it is the bakeries. There's no doubt about that. And so that's where you go. And if you go to England, you get your fish and chips. Get the fish and chips in the paper, which is the way they serve it in a paper cone. Get the original. I don't cook, but I watched people, particularly in Brooklyn, my family, make delicatessen sandwiches. Go to New York, go to Katz's. Right. You can go to 5,000 Michelin star restaurants in New York City, but they're imported. Go to where a particular cuisine began. And that really does, then go to all the fancy and stuff and all that. Now, I want to get back to the writing of the book. A lot of people who are listening really are veteran travelers. They're travel addicts like we are, Karen. And I'm one of these. They do not sit down and write their memoir. I'm one of them. I do not write my memoir. With all my writing and all this, I don't do it. But you do it. So how did it start? And do you have a process?
Yes. Yes and yes. I'm going to say, and again, I attribute a lot of who I am today to my mother and my grandma. My mother, on the first big trip we took as a family, we went to Florida. And my mother insisted that I keep a journal. And I wrote what we did and I drew pictures. I still have it. We went on our next trip up to the Orcadians up in Canada. Same thing. You have to write a journal. You're not going to remember anything. I did. She got me into the habit of it from when I was 8 years old. I did it. Any personal trip I ever took, I kept a journal. And they were very well labeled with the dates, the location. And I can go back to anywhere and read my journal, know what was happening. And I kept very good notes, really good notes. So when I started to write, there were certain stories I knew I had to put in there. And I joined a writing group in about 2000, I guess, maybe 2001, which was my 50th birthday. I took a year off and traveled around the U.S. just by myself because I thought, God, I've seen the entire world, but there are all these places in the U.S. that I've always wanted to go to and never got to. So I need to do this. And when COVID hit,
Yes.
And my writing group had been saying to me over and over again, you have to put these into a book. They're fantastic. But when COVID hit and I had already retired, I thought, perfect time to do it. I'm going to put these into a book, which I did. And then I started looking for a publisher. I was not going to self-publish, and I found a publisher, amazingly enough. They published a book. It did very well. And I thought, okay, now I'll write the second book because the first book was Travel Mania. The second book, people kept saying, oh my God, you met such extraordinary people and you've been to such unusual places. And I've been to some really out of the way places. And some of the food stories are fabulous. Write about those three. We want to hear about those. Okay. So that became the second book.
So, it's interesting. My process is very different. I write nothing down. Now I have some chronicle because I take a lot of pictures. But I'm an impressionistic. If I were going to compare this with art, I would say that you are a representational painter. It's really what's happening. And it really is there. I'm an impressionist painter. It's how I feel about it. And so it's not a story. It's a fleeting thought or a feeling. And that's what I tend to write about. And it comes through in some of the Travel Tuesdays. How do you feel when you're in a place, not what you see when you're in a place? It's very, very different. But I bring this up because there are a lot of people who are writers out there listening right now, or people who would like to be. And as we all know, that as we get older, we get more creative. That is true, by the way. that is neurologically true. So if you want to express yourself as a painter, a real painter, or a poet, as my mom started to write poetry when she was 90, then you should go ahead and do it because this is your time. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk about where Karen is going next, and we're going to talk about a couple more of the extraordinary experiences that you can have. Whether you read her book and do it as an armchair traveler, and then go and do it and use it as a guide, or whether you write your own story and let us know about it. Don't you guys go anywhere. We'll be right back. To become and stay an Ageless traveler, subscribe to our free weekly newsletter, Travel Tuesday. Just visit agelesstraveler.com, click subscribe, and enter your name and email for a surprise gift. What's the surprise? Well, if I tell you, it's not a surprise. What I can say is that Travel Tuesday tackles travel barriers like money, health, companionship, and even travel burnout, and gives you a taste of what our blog and podcast have to offer every single week, helping you explore the world effortlessly. And now we're back. You know, when I was a kid, I learned a very big word. You had to learn a big word. And the word was raconteur. And that's who we are with. We're with a raconteur, a storyteller, somebody who mesmerizes you with her life experiences. And that, in our case, of course, it's travel. Karen Gershowitz, author and travel addict. So since you're such a big travel addict, what are your plans? Where are you going next?
Well, I am headed off in 2 weeks to Mexico, first to Mexico City, and then actually to a spa in the mountains in a little town called Ixtapan de la Sal.
I'm going to ask you a question that you absolutely cannot answer. I know. What's your favorite place? They all, I know that's the worst question everybody.
I have an answer, though.
You do? Yay. What
I do. My favorite place is wherever I'm going next.
Yes, I say that too. It's like, I always say the next one, but that's true because that's what a travel addict is all about. For those of you who know that I give it an answer, I say, look, you're going to get very bored if you know the answer. In my case, where I would go back over and over again, and that's London. So it's a typical place, but I happen to love it. And if I could only travel, that was my punishment. I could only travel to one other place outside of the U.S. It would be England. So if you could only travel to one other place, it's a very hard question.
There are two places that I can think of. I'm sorry, I can't give you one.
Okay, fair.
And London might be one of them. That would be number 3. First one would be Greece.
Oh.
I have spent a lot of time on Crete and the other Greek islands, and I absolutely love them. Absolutely love them for many, many reasons. For many years, a group of friends and I rented a house in a little tiny fishing village on the northeast shore of Crete, very remote. There were 500 people, and we kept going back. And so when we arrived, they would go, oh, the Americans are back. And we got to know the people in the town. They would have parties for us. It was just the most social, wonderful place. The water was gorgeous. The views were gorgeous. It was like the place at the end of the rainbow, if you can imagine. So that's a place I would love. The other place that I absolutely love is Vancouver and Vancouver Island and British Columbia, because it's got a mix of both natural beauty that is spectacular, but also a very vibrant city. Again, with lots of cuisines and lots of things to do, and it's got a perfect climate. Unlike London, it has a perfect climate. And it is, perfect all year round. I always thought if you were that far north, you'd get a ton of snow. On Vancouver Island, they get no snow whatsoever. And it's just a gorgeous part of the world. So that would be my second choice.
So we thank you so much because you really have been a wonderful guest to whet our appetite and to inspire us.
Thank you.
For everybody, you know that you go to agelesstraveler.com. Everything we do is free. You have a lot of wonderful ebooks. You can give to our charity, which is Good Grief. You will see in the show notes how to make a donation. This is for kids who've lost parents early in life. One of the most important things that you are doing for them is you're helping them go to grief camp, which is something that I wish I had decades and decades ago when I lost my dad so suddenly. It makes a very big difference in their life, and it makes a very big difference to the schools, to the parents, and to the grandparents. It's called Good Grief, and take a look and you can donate. And if it's $35 or more, you'll get a free copy of my latest book, The Retirement Income Explosion. So, in addition to that, Travel Tuesday is one of the best newsletters. It's called The Voice of the 60-Plus Traveler. It is free. You get it every single week. And all you have to do is subscribe on agelesstraveler.com. You'll also see in the show notes how to do that. And of course, I know you now want to read Karen's books, and you'll see how to get those, the Wanderlust books and the Travel Mania book. And for everybody, you know what I'm going to say. Never stop traveling.